I want to talk about onboarding and paywall and how I get like an 8 to 10% installed to paid ratio. I'm just going to break it down into a few pretty simple steps, and we're going to start with like the purpose of onboarding, right? In a lot of onboardings, you'll see people are collecting data on the user and personalizing the app to them. And that's totally right. Like, if you look at this, I'm asking here, this is my looks maxing app. You know, what gender are you? How old are you? And that sort of data does genuinely affect their in-app experience. This one is just learning where they're from. And then we get into questions like this. What's holding your appearance back the most, right? For a looks maxing app, this is a targeted sort of question that builds the narrative. And that's the main thing about the onboarding, I find, is that really you're building the narrative, you're telling the story and building them up until the paywall, because you want to increase their intent as much as possible to boost your conversion. So questions like this, what's holding you back with your appearance the most? It gives you all sorts of reasons. But my app doesn't necessarily use this data in order to hyper-personalize the app for that purpose, right? Actually, what it's really doing is allowing the user to sort of deepen themselves in the app. So let's go with facial structure. What's your weakest attribute, right? The app will actually scan this itself when you get to the face scan feature. So we're not collecting data at this point. We're selling the story. We're selling the fact that this app is going to fix your problem, right, that you have with your physical appearance, at least the problem you have with yourself. And then again, why do you want to improve your potential? And if we get through this, like if we made you a daily jawline routine, would you follow it seriously, right? What kind of a crazy question is that, you know? We're almost like turning the tables on the user there and saying, are you sure you're ready to commit, right? And you see this with some onboardings where they make you sign something like your signature or hold your thumb down to sort of commit. And that is really effective because it makes them, in their head, make more likely to convert at the paywall because you're building them up, right? So that's the first point, and the rest goes on just as such, right? And again, look, if you don't follow the plan we give you, you can't blame us if you don't see progress, right? It's like telling the user, like, this is a journey you're about to go on with this app. You are going to improve, but you have to put the effort in. Because it's true, in order to looks max or get better at the gym with a gym app, you have to actually do the work, right? But what it really is acting as like a mentor, right? It's like, you know, you really need to commit. And it kind of subconsciously makes them commit to your app. The second point is like the ideal onboarding length, right? You see CalAI doing like 30, 35 steps. But in mine, I do about 10 or 12. And the reason for that is because I've tested both, right? I tried CalAI's because obviously I'm going to copy them and see if it works. And it didn't. It actually reduced conversion rate for me. And I believe the reason why is because CalAI is an app that you don't need to use right now. It's likely that somebody's scrolling in bed and, you know, they're going to commit to their calorie deficit tomorrow, you know? So they're happy to go through this massive onboarding because they're not worried about getting to the main feature right now. The reason why Glowly and a looks maxing app benefits more or gets higher conversion from like a 10 to 12 step is because the person is most likely here to get their face scanned and see what their result is, right? Because that's what they saw at the top of the funnel. That's what they saw in the ad, is you can get a face scan and you can get told how to improve, right? And so it depends on your type of app, but just think about your ideal user and what they're coming to your app for. If they're coming for a fun feature immediately that they want to use, give them a short onboarding. Don't give them a hard time. If it's more like CalAI where you make progress and you start tomorrow and you make progress over a week, then you can deepen the intention even further with like a 30-step, 40-step onboarding, right? And keep them in there for like 3 or 4 minutes. The next thing I want to mention is that you're going to see that there is no sign in or sign up whatsoever in my onboarding, right? And this specifically goes because I have an iOS app and it obviously just reads their iCloud account because I don't use any databases or anything like that, any third-party databases. I just use iCloud and CloudKit. And the reason that's that works for my onboarding is because it reduces friction. It's annoying to have to sign in, especially if I have to sign in with Google or email and password, right? So if you're just running an iOS app, don't have any authentication whatsoever. You don't need it because CloudKit does that for you. Another point I want to make just here is always ask for a rating in your onboarding, right? Apple allows this. This is not like a dodgy tactic whatsoever. Most apps do this too, and obviously Kalei is the king of it, right? They kind of made everybody aware of this way of improving your reviews. People are trained with Uber and Grab. I guess that's the Thai version that you won't know, but people are trained to give 5 stars and possibly even give you a good rating because they want maybe a good price or something like that. So if you're paying for people to come and use your app, right, and they don't end up paying, you might as well get a review out of it. So you're just maximizing like your ASO boost that you get from that, which ranks you higher on the App Store and further and further. So definitely ask for a rating in your onboarding, right? Now we're gonna talk about like teasing the reveal, right? So all up until this point, we're selling this story to the user. As you can see, the rating finally popped up. But up until this point, we've been selling to the user the story of why they're here, right? You're going to improve your looks. You're going to become more attractive. Everybody wants to be more attractive, right? And we're selling that story. Now we get to starting to tease the reveal, right? The viral feature, the face scan that they saw in the ad. So if I click through here, it now says, how to take a perfect scan, use good lighting, face forward, clear, background, high quality. And this is when they get to use the feature. And for this, I think I'm going to have to use my phone or something in order to take this photo very quickly. But all I'm going to do, if I now connect, that should work fine. Yeah, so I've just taken a photo of myself, right? And I'm going to commit that and click use this photo, yeah? And now I am actually making an API call for this. You don't actually need to do an API call until they pay. You can wait for them to pay, like GlamUp did that from what I read from Nicole's doc. They just gave you a blurred review that wasn't real, and then when you pay, it actually calls the API. But because it's so fucking cheap now with Chinese models, you can afford to actually just do this process. As you can see on the paywall, we've got their photo. It's like confirming that they've been rated, and then you've got the blurred results here, right? Subscribe to unlock. And this is the big moment that you've built up your user for. And it's the reason that they're here is to get this feature. So of course, this is where you paywall it, right? So pricing, as you can see, I do $50 a year and $10 a week. And I also highlight the savings per year that you get by going yearly, right? The benefit of $10 a week and $50 a year is that the weekly really anchors the yearly as an amazing price. The yearly is obviously great because you want as much upfront revenue as you can get, right? If you're running ads especially, you've got overheads and you need to increase your profit margin as much as possible. The weekly is great because it anchors the yearly as a great price. So you get a much higher conversion on yearly than you would if you were to put yearly to what the weekly price actually would be, right? If it was 12 months. But a lot of people do go for the weekly, and the benefit of the weekly is that if somebody doesn't want to pay $50, they can get a way cheaper way into the app, right? If this were to be monthly for $24.99, I probably wouldn't be profitable. Even though it would, on paper, be bring in more revenue, it wouldn't convert anywhere near as much because nobody, people are way less likely to pay $25 than they are to pay $10, right? And obviously, you earn more money from weekly if people stay on for multiple weeks at a time. So pricing wise, this is what I would suggest for an app like mine, where you get a big moment like this. No trial, just, you have to commit. You have to pay the money in order to get through and commit to your looks maxing, right? For other apps like Prayalok or Kalei, trials make total sense because with Kalei, you're logging your, food every day. And it's very likely going to convert that trial. I've tried trials before and it converts very few. So it depends on your app, whether or not you're offering a trial. If you do offer a trial, it's pretty similar, right? You keep your weekly at $10, no trial, and then you make your yearly even more expensive at like $89.99, $99.99. and you give them a 7-day free trial, not 3 days, because Revenue Cap put out reports that the 7-day trial actually gets far more conversions, right? So yeah, put the trial on the yearly, and ideally you'll get a lot more upfront revenue because you'll also be able to double your yearly price. So if that's like the core concept of you've built up the onboarding and now you've come to this big magical moment, which is when people are most likely to convert. And then, yeah, the last thing I was going to talk about was testing your paywalls, right? This paywall has come from many sort of variants that I've tested over time. And there are so many tools out there, like Superwall, for example, everybody knows is great for testing your paywalls. And but actually, I've never used Superwall or any like tool to test my paywalls. I've just spent 1 week using one variant, another week using another variant, and so on, and eventually found my sort of optimized paywall at the highest conversion rate, right? So you can use tools, or you can just wait it out a little bit more and do it like I did. Totally up to you. Honestly, I'd probably recommend using Superwall because, you know, you get your data faster. But yeah, test your paywalls, test your onboarding, because even if you can increase your conversion rate by just 0.5%, you're making more money. And it's funny, you know, I had the first version of my paywall and onboarding was converting maybe at like install to paid, maybe like 3%. Just by increasing my just by improving my onboarding and my paywall, I managed to get another 5 points on that, you know, up to 8%. And that made me profitable when running ads. So don't underestimate the power of a well-sold story during onboarding and a well-sold reveal on the paywall. Yeah, that's everything. I hope that you got some value, and good luck.